13 corporations that profited from slavery. So here we go. Number 1, J.P. Morgan Chase. Between 1831 and 1865, 2 predecessor banks, Citizens Bank and Canal Bank in Louisiana, accepted approximately 13,000 enslaved individuals as collateral on loans and took ownership of approximately 1,250 of them when the plantation owners defaulted on the loans. Number 2, New York Life. An insurance company sold insurance policies on enslaved Africans. Number 3, Wachovia. 2 historical predecessors owned enslaved Africans and accepted them as payment. Number 4, N.M. Rothschild and Sons Bank in London. Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the banking family's 19th century patriarch, made personal gains by using enslaved Africans as collateral in dealings with a slave owner. I have a list of this, so if I stumble, it's because I have a lot of chicken scratch. Number 4, Norfolk Southern offered slaveholders $180. That's $3,379 today. This article was written in 2013. So that's $3,379 today a piece for enslaved Africans they would rent to the railroad for 1 year. The Central Georgia, another company aligned with Norfolk Southern Line today, valued slaves at $31,303. Today that would be $663,033. Did I say that right? Yes. $663,033. Hopefully that came out right. Sounds weird. Number 5. U.S. Today found that their parent company, E.W. Scripps and Gannett, had links to the slave trade. Number 6. Fleet Boston evolved from an early financial institution. Providence Bank founded John Brown, who was a slave trader and owned ships used to transport enslaved Africans. The bank financed Brown's slave voyages and profited from them. Brown even reportedly helped charter what became Brown University. Number 7. CSX used slave labor to construct portions of U.S. rail lines under the political and legal system that was in place more than a century ago. 2 enslaved Africans were John Henry and Reuben. The record states they were to be returned clothed when they arrived to work for the company. Number 8. Canadian National Railway Company. The Mobile and Ohio, now part of Canadian National, valued their slaves lost to the war and emancipation at $199,691 on record. That amount is currently worth $2.2 million. Whew. Number 9. Brown Brothers Harriman, the oldest and largest private investment bank, founded 1818, owned hundreds of enslaved Africans and financed the cotton economy by lending millions to Southern planters, merchants, and cotton brokers. Number 10. Brooks Brothers. high-end suit retailer, got their start selling slave clothes to various slave traders in the 1800s. They got their start by selling slave clothes. Number 11, Barclays. British multinational banking and financial services company headquartered in London has now conceded that companies brought over the years may have been involved in the slave trade. Number 12, Lehman Brothers. This business empire started in the slave trade. Quote from Joe Pelizotto: "This is a sad part of our history or our heritage. We're deeply apologetic. It was a terrible thing. There's no one sitting in the United States in the year 2005, hopefully, who would ever in a million years defend the practice." 13, Aetna. Aetna? Aetna. U.S. largest health insurer, apologized for selling policies in the 1850s that reimbursed slave owners for financial losses when the enslaved Africans they owned died. Aetna has long acknowledged that for several years shortly after its founding in 1853, that the company may have insured the lives of slaves. A few other corporations, companies that profited from slavery: Princeton, Harvard Law School, Tiffany & Co., Bank of America, Yale University, and Wells Fargo.
All right. Here we go. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You know how we do. Let's talk about something that doesn't get much attention, especially from foundational Black American men like Black men. Their energy seems to decrease when it comes to this subject matter. Which is a little strange. A lot of times when you talk about the Jewish people, Black men have a tendency to talk about, oh, why do they get all of this and why does all of this? But when it came time for their reparations, they stand stronger than Black men. The Jewish men stand on business when it comes to what happened to them under Hitler and all of that. And so the Black man in America, you're not up to par with the Jewish man in America or the Native American in America that claims to be Native American more than you claim that lineage, because you are definitely African descent and Native American descent. That's a whole nother video why Black men in America try to choose one or the other, knowing that you are definitely both. You're definitely mixed. So the Black people in America, you're definitely African, Native American, and white. Ouch, huh? You definitely don't claim the white part. I don't know why. I don't know what makes you think you're pure. You don't look like a pure nothing. But I guess only Big Pharaoh There's definitely a mix in real life, not in the life of scholars, because scholars don't live in the real world, right? But in the real world, we don't know who slept with who when you talk in street terms, like the beautiful Angelina. When I run into Angelina, she's so cute. I'm not gonna check her DNA. It's just gonna go down. Am I right, Angelina? I ain't gonna check your DNA. I'm just gonna try to get your phone number and come holler at you. I'm definitely not gonna check. I'm not gonna check her DNA. Mm-mm. Oh no, we're gonna mix our DNA together. Ain't no telling what that baby gonna be. What would be the most logical aggressive tactic to get reparations for all FBA the fastest is first for them to want it. Yeah, it's first is for them to want it. You can't get it if you don't want it, right? So first is to let everybody know that that's a thing. Reparations is not known as a thing. It hasn't been pushed, and we really didn't have the type of social media we got now to push it. So we didn't have the social media. Salute to my brethren Ijavan. His people come from Jamaica. They're in the same issue to push for reparations for the brothers and sisters in Jamaica, the Caribbean, the brothers and sisters in Africa. Look at what happened in Africa. Look at the Congo. Look at all the suffering that happened in the Congo. Yes, they did. We have all of that into our DNA, but it ain't gonna hurt us because we created everybody. So when that blood comes back, it won't do nothing to us. At one time, everybody on the planet was brown until you had the Pangea. And we had the Pangea, and all the continents broke apart. That's when everybody turned all these different colors, and then eventually we'll all get back together. And we're a part of that situation. But for sure, our near descendants are definitely owed reparations. Now they say you could trace reparations if you could trace your family back to the 1800s. Then you would be able to get reparations. And one of the biggest problems is that foundational Black Americans don't really understand uh, that it wasn't that long ago. That's really the big problem now is getting our brothers and sisters to know that really the money they owe us is just from just yesterday. They're saying if you can trace your lineage back to the 1800s with the census, that would prove you get reparations. Well, look at these numbers right here. This is my mother's grandmother. This is my great grandmother. Look when she was born, 1876. I used to hang out with her. Look when she passed away, 1993, right? I was born what? 1958. I was going to Alabama what? In the 60s, in the 70s, in the early 80s. Therefore, I was hanging out with my great grandmother, right? Yeah, and they go back even further than that. This is just her, and I could show her mother. Now, she is Sue. She is Sue. This is my mother's grandmother. But her son, my grandfather, is Sioux and African. Okay? His mama was Sioux, but his daddy had African blood. Okay? You see? And you can go and you can see the Native Americans and the Africans fighting in Florida against the colonials. So it's history that we were united because you had various Native Americans. So we'll go into that one day because Native Americans wasn't really Native Americans. They were from Incas, Aztecs, Mayans, Eskimos, South American, Caribbean, right? So yes, they definitely would capture Native Americans and put them into slavery because the Native Americans is not a real name, okay? So, brother, Native American is not is not real. It's something they made up. These people were not Native American. They were indigenous people that traveled to and fro. So they wasn't necessarily indigenous to America just because they was here when Christopher Columbus came. Don't mean they had been here a long time. A lot of them came up from Brazil and there when the Spanish invaded South America, a lot of them ran. When the French and them was fighting up in Canada, a lot of the Eskimo type ran down. Okay. So this is why you see they had teepees, a lot of them, and a lot of them was transitional. The ones in like Seattle, Washington, I went up there and watched them put the teepees together. They have these special trees that got these long trunks with no leaves. The leaves is only at the very top. And I'm telling you, when they put those sticks together to make the teepee, it's like 15 feet high. 15 feet high, right? So these people wasn't technically Native Americans. They were different people from different places. So that's why they didn't get along. When I was coming up, they said Indians, Indians. And I used to ask my mom, Mama, why the Indians was fighting each other? Because they weren't Indians. They were different people. So this why the Comanche fight the Apache. Comanche and Apache is not nowhere the same people, nowhere close. So some of them was a reddish, like a clay reddish. Some of them was a brownish, like me, reddish. Some of them was light, beige. Some of them was jet black. It was, you know what I'm saying? Because they weren't really Native American. They were indigenous uh, people that was traveling. They were travelers and lived in different places in this country. And a lot of them was the black, right? And a lot of them was like a darkish, reddish black, right? It's a whole lot of different kinds. Some came from the north. Yeah, they were nomadic. Some came from the north, some came from the south. But mostly they was escaping wars. If you know anything about the wars, you know that the French, the Spanish, and the British was all over here fighting, right? Okay. They were fighting everywhere, not just here. Now you got to know that the first main travel here was the Spanish. The Spanish went to the Caribbean, right? And then the Spanish went to South America. And then when the Spanish got back to the Caribbean, all the people had passed away because they had gave them a common cold, and those people couldn't live with a common cold. So they passed away. So then the Spanish went and got Africans and brought Africans back to the Caribbean to grow the sugar that they had got from South America. Okay? That's how that went. So there's not a lot of information on that, but I did do a video on that. I need to upload that so you all could see it. I did it for some people down in the islands. Mm. So I need to show you all that one day. I will show that. Right. But we always here at a particular time and work for free. So we all here and we always working for free. And that has a lot to do with what's going on with us in this country. Because we are here and we were working for free. Hold on. What did I do with my camera? I got to get my camera back on. Oh, is it? Okay, there we go. Were Africans complicit in the slave trade, or how can they ask for reparations? They would not ask for reparations in the United States. They would ask for reparations for what happened in Africa. Okay? That's a good question. But yeah, they would be getting reparations for what happened in Africa. Okay? Indigenous Black Americans, they're mixed. So Indigenous Black Americans is not accurate. So those that say they're indigenous cannot show you their DNA, and they cannot prove to you who slept with who. I'll challenge any indigenous Black American to show me who slept with who. They got 2 parents. They got 4 grandparents. They got 8 great-great-grandparents. They got 16 great-great-great-grandparents. They got 32 great-great-great-great-grandparents. They got 64 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. And you do not know who those 64 people are. So that would be a very easy debate to win because you do not know who your 64 great, 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 great grandparents are. So you don't know who slept with who. So for anybody to say, oh, I'm this, is just talking. It sounds good, but you don't know. And then how you get the name Johnson, Smith, if you got them names from the slave owner, and the slave owner was sleeping with you. That's why you Smith, Johnson, Jackson. As a matter of fact, your last names is son. You're Jack's son. You're Stephen's son. You're Richard's son. That's why I named Richardson, Jackson, because they sunned us. So you wouldn't be no indigenous Jackson or no indigenous. No, sounds good. But how'd you get the name Jackson, Stevenson, Richardson, Smith, Robinson? How you get those names? Those ain't Native American names. So that's make believe. That's make believe. Now hold on a second. Let me see if I could do a little something here. I don't know how to figure this out. Do I do this? Give me just a minute. So the point I'm making is that here we go. Is that we are a lot of things. But we definitely deserve our reparations. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Our reparations is definitely due. Colonialism in the Caribbean. Let's talk about it. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this little video. Then we're going to come back. We're going to finish this conversation, all right? So you all check this out. This is very interesting. I made this for some people in the Caribbean. This will help our conversation even be even more legitimate, okay? Check it out. Colonialism in the Caribbean. Let's talk about it. colonialism in the Caribbean started in the 15th century, mostly around 1493. And it was a result of Christopher Columbus landing in the area and claiming it for the Spanish. Now, the Spanish were mostly concentrating on conquering the Inca and the Aztec in South and Central America. But the Caribbean islands were very strategic for them to travel back and forth across the ocean. So the Caribbean really suffered a lot because of these travels back and forth and because of the conquest in South and Central America by the Spanish people. Now, as Spanish settlers started to move into the Caribbean more and more, a lot of the native people of the Caribbean got sick from European diseases, and many of them died. And because so many of them died, the Spanish decided to pull out. And this is when you have the French and the British starting to come into the area really heavily in the 1600s, like 1620s through 1630s. And they started to come into the area heavily. And with the start of the Atlantic slave trade, they started to bring in hundreds of thousands of Africans into the Caribbean to do the work, since so many of the native people had died from the diseases. And so the Caribbean islands really were the main focal point of slavery and really suffered a serious devastation dealing with slavery and the Africans being brought there from Africa. The Caribbean islands was the breeding ground and also the breaking grounds where they took the slaves to break them. So in many cases, when people in America questioned slavery and questioned how many boats and how many slaves came, they failed to realize that many of the slaves were bred once they were brought to the Caribbean, and many of the slaves were bred once they were brought to America. So not all of the slaves came across the ocean. They were babies raised into slavery, bred into slavery. And the Caribbean was a main place for this to happen, all through, Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, all over the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, where the Danes were down there doing horrible things to the Maroons to break them. And this went all the way up to Bermuda. Now, you must know that Bermuda is not actually a Caribbean island because it's far north. But it might as well have been a Caribbean island because it suffered much of the same colonialism that all of the islands in the Caribbean suffered. And the only reason Bermuda is not a Caribbean island because it's just a bit north. Now, after the Spanish-American War, only Cuba and Puerto Rico remained territory of Spain. The rest of the islands ended up being all split up and invaded by various nations, Dutch, French, British, mostly French and British. You had Portuguese coming down there too, but the Portuguese spent most of their energy in the South Pacific, like Hawaii. So this is how the Spanish end up after that war, not being so heavily involved with the Caribbean. But the British and the French really stepped it up and really came in heavily and really were the backbones of a lot of the slavery that was going on down there. Because even though a lot of the indigenous people had died from the diseases the Europeans brought down there, the land was perfect for the sugar cane and the coffee plantations, mainly the sugar cane. So they were down there beating and mistreating the Africans from Africa to get them to work on these sugarcane plantations. And this was all throughout the Caribbean and Bermuda. And it was really horrible. The black people in those areas suffered tremendously. And it was often said that some of the slaves that couldn't be broke, they would not breed them or bring them to the United States. They would leave them down there or just kill them. Now, before the European conquest in the Caribbean, some of the oldest people known in that area were the people in Trinidad, in that area where you had both Carib people and you also had the Arawak real heavy. You also had Arawak all throughout the Caribbean. But Trinidad has some of the oldest findings of these people. And these people flourished all through that area before the Spanish and the British and the French came down, and the Danes came down. The Danes were very brutal, especially in St. Croix and the Virgin Island, where they had horrible practices that they did to the Maroon people. The Danes were so brutal in St. Croix, and the slave owners were so brutal in the Virgin Islands that you know, if you did something wrong and they forgave you, you had to, you know, lose a leg or ear, or they would brand you on your forehead. You know, it was a horrible situation all throughout the Caribbean, and some of the punishments was unreal. All down in Jamaica, where they would cut the women's stomachs open and the babies would fall out, and they would stomp the babies to death in front of the women and men and other children. And so the situation was extremely brutal in the Caribbean. In many ways, it was more brutal than it was in the United States. So, you know, like for example, in St. Croix, if there was a plot for an uprising or an escape, and you knew something about it, and they found out, you know, they would brand you on your forehead. You know, it was just unbelievably cruel. And many of these people that was involved in that were descendants of the nation of pirates, and this is not historically documented. But pirates roamed the seas in those days and took slaves, even of their own Europeans, to do the rowing. And so you had, when you think about pirates, you think about one ship, but you would have fleets of pirate ships that would just be out doing all type of things. And these were some of the people that were early participants in slavery. And so the brutality that they had towards their own European people They just continued that on to the people of the Caribbean, the Arawak people, the Maroons, and all the brothers and sisters that was taken from Africa. Now, one reason things got so crazy is because when the Spanish started taking all the gold from South and Central America from the Aztec and the Incas, then other countries in Europe wanted a piece of the action. So you had people coming from the British coming, you had people coming from the Netherlands, and you had people coming from France. So it was just an all-out race to come and steal from the people in South and Central America. And because the Caribbean was in the path, this what developed the slave trade when they realized that they could grow crops there that they couldn't grow in Europe and then ship them back to Europe. This is way before America got in the game. So the originators of the whole slave trade starts with the Spanish. And this is not taught too much in history, but this is a fact. And the black people, the dark people that lived in the Caribbean, the indigenous people, and the brothers and sisters that were brought there in slavery suffered the initial brutality of slavery. Now, although the Spanish tried to control the total area at first in the Caribbean, they mostly focused on the larger islands, Cuba, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. This is where they focused mostly and did most of the damage. But like I said earlier, because of the plagues and diseases that killed a lot of people, and because of the war, the Spanish-American War, that depleted the forces from Spain. And then that's when you had a big movement with the French and the British, and later the Americans. There was a lot of action, and the French and the British and the Spanish really concentrated a lot on Bermuda. Bermuda, quiet as it's kept, was one of the main places that they also wanted to come in and dominate because of the beauty of the place and because of the weather and the climate allowed them to force slaves to grow all types of crops, especially spices that they could take to Europe. In those days, spices and gold were some of the main things people traded for. Tobacco, coffee, sugar. These things were very valuable in Europe where the climate was not suitable to grow these things, especially up in the Netherlands. And when you start talking about the Danes, that were also very upset with the British because the British had, land that was somewhat better for growing, and the Danes were in a very cold, harsh climate. And this is, if you go back and study, you'll see the major war between the Danes and the British were all about this Viking culture trying to get out of the cold and come down to find better places to live in Europe. And the Danes and the Vikings were known for sailing, so were the Spanish. And so these conquests within Europe spread to conquest of places where black people live. including Africa, the Caribbean, and the brown people of South and Central America. So as more nations came in to get a piece of the pie, the Dutch came in, took over places like Saba, Aruba, St. Martin, St. Croix, Puerto Rico, which they called the Dutch West Indies. The French came in and took a lot of places. The British came in. And if you look at the beginning of this video and notice the Caribbean flags, you'll notice the British flag is a part of a lot of the Caribbean islands' flag, just to show how colonialism is still a huge part in that region. What is known as the U.S. West Indies was controlled by Denmark. It was called the Danish West Indies, which was mostly the Virgin Islands. These were the Danes, some of the most brutal people ever, and they brought their brutality from Europe down to the Virgin Islands, especially St. Croix, and lots of horrible things happened to the Maroons on St. Croix during slavery and during that era. So everyone started coming in for a piece of the pie. So you eventually get to the period where, the French and the Spanish got into a big war. And this is when more confusion happens and more places are switched over from one slave owner to another. So this is how the Caribbean end up split up between so many European nations, because these European nations were going to war over that area. And with the development of agriculture down there, they began to take advantage of the slave trade. And so things just went from bad to worse. It went from terrorizing the indigenous people of these islands to bringing in people from Africa and totally brutalizing them to get them to do the free labor, and so that these European countries could become filthy rich by having free labor and not having to pay for labor. So when you look at the wealth of America and Europe, all of that wealth was built on the backbones of destroying people, killing people, and taking their land, and for, decades and decades of free labor. So these nations just brought in lots and lots and lots of slaves. The British brought in like 1,665,000 slaves. The Dutch brought in 500,000 to their areas. And the French brought in like 1,600,000 slaves to the French Indies. So you had the British Indies, the Dutch Indies, and the French Indies, and they were bringing slaves like crazy by the millions, so that they can take advantage of this free labor and use this luscious land to grow. And they had to bring the slaves in because when the Spanish came in, as I said earlier, the indigenous people got sick from the diseases and were dying off in large numbers. And so the land didn't have enough people to work the land, so they brought in Africans to do the work. Now, when you get to like the 1800s, the British had the abolition of the Slave Trade Acts, like 1807. And so people that were still slaves, that were already slaves, remained slaves. They didn't take any new slaves. And it was like 1830 something before they released the people that were slaves. So this was when some of the slavery eased up with the British uh, Indies, you know. But many of the slave owners, quiet as it's kept, didn't abide by those rules. The same in America, that even though slavery was abolished, back off in those areas where nobody could get to, where there's just hundreds and hundreds of acres, there were people in America that were still slaves until the 1970s. And there's a sister called the Slave Doctor. You can go watch documentaries on that. That a lot of the people didn't know slavery was over until they started hearing about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. So you can only imagine just how long people suffered under slavery in the Caribbean and in these farm areas south in the United States. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if people are still in slavery in many of these places. So in Europe, sugar was a luxury before the 18th century. And after so many people were abused and forced to work in the Caribbean, in the sugarcane fields, then sugar slowly became a necessity in Europe from so much of this free labor and so much of these goods that are basically stolen because the people are stolen, forced to work. They're not paid, and so everything you harvested was stolen. So when you look at these huge sugar companies, they owe the people in the Caribbean and the black people in the United States, they owe them reparations for the sugar that built these companies. And this is a major problem in the world, that many banks and many companies that grow coffee and tobacco and sugar and cotton, many of these industries never paid the money back that they got from this free labor. And so a lot of the families in the Caribbean and in the United States are on billions of dollars in revenues for free labor that was forced upon their ancestors. So many of the brothers and sisters in the Caribbean suffered for a long time. Haiti was the first ones to break away. By 1804, Haiti had finally won their war and become independent. But places like Jamaica and Trinidad didn't get their independence until 1962. And so just look at all that time from the 1400s, people being down there, till the 1900s of just brutality. And so even still today, all through the Caribbean and all up in Bermuda, you can see the effects of colonialism in a white-dominated society upon the indigenous Arawak people and the African people that were brought there as slaves. And the police departments for a long time were brutal and all white. And the system in the Caribbean was set up to keep the black people down and to keep them oppressed. And so when you start getting to the Black Power era in the United States, this started to spread through the Caribbean, so and some other islands like Bermuda, and so Bermuda was paying attention to what was going on with black people in America, and they began to rise up in the 70s, and you had a group called the Black Beret. And the Black Beret were basically some Black Panthers in Bermuda that was fighting against the white oppression that was going on the island. And so it's been a long fight for people to rise up. And the system is still not balanced correctly all through the Caribbean, Bermuda, Jamaica, Trinidad, all over. There's gang violence because the power is not quite balanced. And what European nations have done is instead of openly controlling these islands under the leadership of a country, they've switched their game to controlling it through tourism. And so they're heavily invested into tourism, where they control these various islands. If it's controlled by the French, it's set up for the French people to go there for vacation. If it's controlled by the British, it's set up for the British people to go there for vacation. If it's controlled by the Dutch, it's set up for the Dutch to go there on vacation. And so now the Caribbean islands are controlled through these luxury hotels that are set up really nice on one part of the islands, while the people back in the rural black communities suffer and live nowhere near how they should live. So you can go to a place like Jamaica and you can go to some of the nicest resorts in the world, but then turn around and still have shanty towns and poverty and gang war over economic struggles. So the game in the Caribbean has been flipped, and tourism is now the new forms of exploitation. It's done as far as Hawaii the same way. You know, you can go to Hawaii and you can see the effects of tourism. And on these islands in the Caribbean, the main law that the police uphold is to protect the tourists. They don't protect the citizens. They protect the tourism money and the investment that these Europeans have invested into these islands. So there's a huge imbalance all throughout the Caribbean and in Bermuda, where the people are still under oppression and still under colonialism, but it's done through these fancy airlines and these fancy hotels. If you go to the Caribbean, you will notice these rich people that sell their boats down there and dock their boats and live off the boats and live off of the beauty of the island while the people suffer. And the people have to a lot of times have their little booths or whatever and hustle to sell whatever type of novelties they could sell to the tourists. From the Caribbean all to the South Pacific, these places are set up like zoos where you can go, go see the people in the Virgin Islands. Oh, go see the people in Jamaica. Go see the Rastas. Go see the reggae. Go to Trinidad, see the people. So they have people there that to make a living are a part of the exploitation. I was watching a commercial, and I'm not going to say from who, but it was one of these tourists where you go on cruises. And the commercial they had for the cruise, it showed all Europeans and whites on the vacation. And it showed all black people in the Caribbean as servants, opening the doors, bringing you a drink, okay, servicing you. And so they have the black people on these Caribbean islands as servicers. You just service the Europeans. And the Europeans come and live the wonderful life of a rich person or a successful person. And the black people are portrayed as nothing but servants. And this is modern day colonialism still going on all throughout the Caribbean and even here in the United States. And it's disgusting. Now, of course, I have solutions, and this is to all the black and brown people throughout the Caribbean. You all's solution is to break away from whatever country is claiming you and to become one nation. Okay? You must do something new. From Bermuda all the way down, all of your islands, you should become an island nation, one island nation under one island flag. And you all, politicians should all work together like a United Nations or like a Congress or a Senate to do what's best for all of your Caribbean islands and exclude European countries from your business and take control. An economic revolution. You'll never be able to get free being a separate Trinidad, a separate Bermuda, a separate Bahama, a separate Jamaica, a separate Virgin Islands. You don't have a chance. You all must unite and come up with a new name and be basically a country of islands, right? Become a unified country, okay? Even though Bermuda's not in the Caribbean, include them and include all the islands and say, we are now a country. We reject being called British Virgin Islands or U.S. Virgin Islands or, anybody's Virgin Islands or anybody's Caribbean island. We reject that. We are now one united country of islands that are going to look out for the benefit of our own people. We're going to control our own tourism. If the big hotels and stuff want to leave, fine. Take control of your resources and build your own hotels. Build your own casinos and your own restaurants that's going to benefit the people there, okay? And unite your police departments and your military. So now you can have some control over the gang situations because people have exploited the division amongst you and used your islands to also run drugs from South and Central America and use your island as holdover posts for the drugs. And because of that, drug addiction has also swept through the Caribbean islands and Bermuda because so many drugs have been coming through there. So many drugs float up on the coast and up on those islands out there. They float up on the coast of South and Central America. Anybody from Belize could tell you anytime kilos of cocaine might just float up on the shore. So the same in the Caribbean. And so the only hope for the Caribbean and Bermuda is to unite as one nation of islands, and for you all to start electing rulers that want to do that. If you have someone that is the prime minister of your island that does not want to unite with all the other prime ministers of the other island, don't vote them in, because no island can go against a nation. No island can go against France. No little island can go against America. No little island can go against the Dutch or the British. But together, you can go against them and take your power and your clout and start working with black people from Africa that should also unite, and working with black people in America, and create a black tourist industry. If whites want to come, fine. But it's time for us to do for ourselves. So start catering to African Americans that's making money to come to your island. Start setting up your own cruises, buying your own ships, where you have cruises that could take you to every island. And you can go pick the islands you want to go to on a cruise, and it's all in-house. None of the money's going to the British. None of the money's going to the Dutch and the French, to the Hyatt Regency, and to these hotels that have no interest in putting any money back into your island. They're taking the money out and they're sending it to their countries where their family is, and they're creating generational wealth for the people of the Hilton hotels and the Hyatt Regency hotels and these fancy hotels. It's not for your benefit. It all starts with leadership. The leadership in these countries in Africa, the leadership on these islands all through the Caribbean and Bermuda must start getting on one accord if you want to be able to take care of your people. Or you're going to look up and you're going to always still have crime. You're going to always still have gang wars. You're going to always still have poverty on places that are bringing in billions of dollars that is just going right back off of your island and is not benefiting the people there on the island. And you'll never be able to benefit each other until you unite. There's no reason that the Virgin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Croix, St. Kitts, St. Martinique, Bermuda, the Bahamas, there's no reason that you all are not united as one country of islands. This is your only solution. This is what you must do. You must unite. You all got to stop with the tribal war. You're doing the same thing they're doing in Africa. You're making the same mistakes that we're making here in America with our gang problem. Too much tribal war when all of the tribes are still losing. Yeah, you Trini against the JA. You know, yeah, you VI posse against the Trini, against the JA, but nobody likes the VI posse. Nobody likes the Trinis, and nobody likes the GAA posse from these other countries. And so you can't hate each other when other people hate you too. It's time for Jamaicans and Trinidadians to be like this. Virgin Island brethren like this. Okay? It's time for you all to unite. Or you're going to look up and you're going to have a new colonizer. And China's going to come in and buy you out. Look at Jamaica. Jamaica's being totally sold to the Chinese. There's no need to sell the island to the Chinese when you have so much beauty that people want to see, and you can take control of your own destiny and make that major money off of tourism. So you black people all throughout the Caribbean, unite and take over the black Caribbean, including Bermuda. Take over that tourist industry and take care of your people in your islands. And I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will be back for more, but it's a lot to cover. So stay together, unite, big up yourself, And remember, one God, one aim, and one destiny. So that's a presentation that I made for some people in Bermuda. And I got a few that I've done, documentaries for different people. I need to show them. And this just shows you uh, where our people got to go. So when you see Foundational Black Americans and you see us talking about reparations, that's what it's all about. It's for just what I showed there. You have to get your reparations. You have to demand what was stolen from you to be replaced. And it doesn't make any sense for Black people somewhere else that's owed reparations to be all in our business when you owe reparations too. I've seen too many brothers and sisters from Africa got everything to say to FBA as if things are fine in Africa and they should be concentrating on Africa. Same in the Caribbean. Stay out of FBA's business and take care of your business. Get yourself together. You understand? Reparations for foundational Black Americans, defined as descendants of persons enslaved in the U.S., are proposed financial and social compensations aimed at addressing the lasting economic, social, and legal impact of slavery and systemic discrimination. Proposals include direct cash payment, trust funds, and community investment to close the racial wealth gap, with some estimates ranging from $500 billion to $14 billion. Key aspects of reparation proposals. Definition of eligibility targeted specifically at those who can trace their ancestry back to American chattel slavery, distinguishing them from more recent immigrants of African descent. Forms of compensation. Proposed initiatives include direct long-term payments, home loan subsidies, education grants, business investment funds, and community infrastructure investment. National apology. Many proposals include a formal apology from the U.S. government for slavery and subsequent discrimination policies. Goal. The primary aim is to close the widening Black-white wealth gap and compensate for the systemic extraction of wealth through enslavement, Jim Crow, and discriminatory policies like redlining. Arguments and perspectives. Support. Proponents argue that reparations are a necessary first step to repair the damage of generational government-sanctioned theft of labor and land. Opposition. Opponents argue that reparations are logistically impossible, that current generations are not responsible for the past, and that slavery was too long ago to warrant modern compensation. Public opinion. Support has grown but remains divided, with 30% of Americans supporting it in recent studies. Current status. While some local governments are exploring local initiatives, the focus for comprehensive reparation is on federal action, which may view as the only entity capable of providing adequate compensation. Revocation and legacy. Despite its early success in establishing self-governing Black communities, the order was short-lived following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So this goes back to what was going on with special order. So field order number 15 was a military directive issued by Union General William Tecumseh Sherman on January 16, 1865. It provided for the confiscation of approximately 400,000 acres of coastal land in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida to be redistributed to formerly enslaved people in the parcels of no more than 40 acres. This order is the historical origin of the phrase 40 acres and a mule. So this is what was proposed years ago in 1865. Key detail of the order. Origin. The order followed a landmark meeting between Sherman, Secretary of War Edmund N. Stanton, and 20 black community leaders in Savannah, Georgia. When asked what they needed for true freedom, the leaders represented by Garrison Frazier emphasized the need for land to become self-efficient. Territory, the designated area often called Sherman's Reservation, stretched from Charleston to South Carolina to St. John's River. So Charleston, South Carolina to St. John's River in Florida, extending 30 miles inland. Implementation. General Rufus Saxton was appointed to oversee the settlement. By June 1865, roughly 40,000 freed people had settled on the land. The mule, while the original order only specified land, Sherman later authorized the Army to loan mules to the new settlers to assist with the farming. Okay? Revocation and legacy. Despite its early success in establishing self-governing black communities, the order was short-lived. Following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, his successor, President Andrew Johnson, revoked the order in the fall of 1865. Most of the land was forcibly returned to its original Confederate owners, leaving many families with no choice but to enter the exploitative system of sharecropping. Today, Special Field Order number 15 remains a central point of discussion in historical and modern debates regarding reparations for slavery. All right? So they took the land back. After you were already given reparations. They took it back. So I just wanted to show that to brothers and sisters, the video. Stop hating on our reparations and stand up in the Caribbean, stand up in Africa and get what you owe. You look crazy being old and all in our business. You look crazy. To brothers and sisters in Africa that keep talking against reparations, brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, you look crazy. You got robbed too. Yeah, you got robbed. So how much time you got to focus on foundational Black Americans get what we owe when you're old? Africa, you know you got robbed. You got 14 countries paying the French right now. Haiti, still paying the French. Jamaica, you're getting robbed every day. Trinidad, robbed every day. People coming in taking your money. And you got the nerve to speak on reparations for foundational Black Americans and won't stand up and get your own reparations. It don't make no sense. It doesn't. Don't make no sense. Makes no sense. Yeah, Haiti is they paying the French, but 14 West African countries is paying the French millions too. Millions. Look it up. Yeah, they still got Africans working in mines in the Congo. How much do the Belgian people owe the Congo? Keep it real. Keep it real. How much do they owe the people in the Congo? Where they taking all that, extracting all that wealth. And I've seen Africans trolling FBA as much as they just stole from Africa. They stole all Africa's wealth and people. And still, look at them Africans down there working for nothing, getting them minerals in the Congo. Make it make some sense. How could any African say anything about reparations for foundation of Black Americans when you over there working like this? Let's just keep it real. Let's keep it real. What's wrong with you brothers and sisters in Africa? What can you say? Let's just be honest here. What can you say? So yeah, I've been talking to people in the Caribbean a long time, making documentaries for people all over this world. I just don't be talking about what I don't talk. I try to get somebody to put the money up for a debate before I show what I know. I'm trying to get one of your fake scholars to get somebody to put up some racks so I could take their money. Because they don't be knowing what they talk about and they don't be knowing who I'm talking to. It's called drunken monkey style. I just act ghetto. Well, no. Uh-uh. Mm-mm. I really do this. So, y'all, we got to get ourselves together. We got to stand up for reparations. We got to keep the pedal to the metal for reparations. And don't be wasting no time arguing with other Black people from other places. Just let them know they need to focus on where they live at. That's what they need to focus on. I don't know how Black people skip their situation where they live at to pay attention to what we got going on. That's what's wrong with us. That's what's wrong with us as a people. You so busy looking at the other brothers and sisters, you ain't even got your own stuff together where you at. That ain't making no sense. Make that make some sense. You know? The way they doing over there. Come on. They got the babies over there in Africa working. And they working with toxic materials. Yeah. They got their children over there making sure they not going to live that long. Got them children over there working with them toxic materials. No proper gear on or nothing. Ain't giving them nothing. So I'm like, what the heck do Africans, what is they talking about? They be out of line. Look, Now, what you look like an African trolling FBA? Come on, man. Y'all got to do better, man. Y'all got to do better. And we got to concentrate on we got to concentrate because them people, man, you arguing with somebody that's in the worst situation. Brothers and sisters in Africa, man, you don't even want to know what's going on over there. So, like, do not be wasting your time arguing with brothers and sisters in Africa because a lot of brothers and sisters in Africa don't even know what's going on in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. What can an African tell me? I'm going to just keep it real. What? What can they say? Look how they doing their children over there. And then people extracting billions and trillions of dollars of natural resources. And look at the people. Come on, man. What we doing? So, foundational black Americans, like, don't be beefing with other black people. Just focus on what got going on. You know what I'm saying? Don't be beefing with the brothers and sisters in Africa. You wasting your time and they got to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? But don't be beefing with them because look how they living. In many places in Africa is horrible. You wouldn't even want to be there. You wouldn't want to be there. So it's like you got to stay focused. Africa's a huge continent, and a lot of Africans don't know how Africans is living. They don't even know they self. You know what I'm saying? They don't. They don't even know they self. So you can't blame them. Africa huge. So them people don't know. They don't even know the conditions of their own country. I'm telling you. They don't know. They don't show them this. They in the dark. So, get a brothers and sisters in Africa a break. You know what I'm saying? They don't know what's going on. You know? They don't know what's going on. Give them a break. They have no clue of the conditions of their own people over there. It's hard for people in America to know how huge Africa is. Africa's huge. And there's no way Africans know anything about Africa. If you live in one part of Africa, the other part is like 1 billion miles away. It is what it is. It's 1 billion miles away. So we just got to focus on what we got to do. You know what I'm saying? Don't be arguing with no brothers and sisters. They you know what I'm saying? They don't know. You're just wasting your energy. You know what I'm saying? All over. The Congo. Look at Somalia. See what I'm saying? You was wasting your time. And even the places that they don't control, you should see them. Look at Egypt. Look at that. That's Egypt. That's our crown jewel in Africa. Look at it. And them ain't black people controlling that. I'm just showing you so you can have a clear mindset on what's going on. You don't let these people confuse you. We got to stay focused. Look at Egypt. That's Egypt. The crown jewel of Africa. Look at it. You know they're going to have plagues. You already know. You already know. And so, I mean, you know what I'm saying? We got to focus. I don't know what else to tell you. We got to push for reparations. We got to unite. We got to stand for reparations. If we don't stand for reparations, we ain't standing for nothing. You can't let people know that you did all this work. You were some of the main people fight for the country all these years. And you just don't let people just rob you. Talking about it was a long time ago. You can't let people rob you like that. They got to pay us. Okay? They got to pay you for what they did. And when you see people that don't agree with that, you know, don't deal with them. If you want to know more details about reparations, there's information that you can read. Get this book right here. From Here to Equality. And then learn the facts about reparations. You know what I'm saying? Victory.